We'll continue our discussion on this issue with two people who frequently disagree about the downtown project, Amarillo City Councilman Brian Eades and Councilman Randy Burkett. Eades was re-elected in May to his 5th term on the council, and Burkett won his seat in May on a platform of change, including the city's approach to downtown redevelopment. Welcome to the set. I appreciate you both being here.
Thank you for having us.
I'm going to start, instead of starting with the stadium, more with the atmosphere at City Hall. There's a divide there that goes deeper, it seems, than the stadium. You've been at odds on economic development, the city manager, the whole downtown strategy. So, Randy, I'll start with you. How would you each characterize the other side's agenda?
Well, at some point I'd like to see all of us start working together. It's divided, and I hate to see that. You know, at some point we just need to all step up, forget about what's happened, and we need to worry about going forward and what we're going to do in the future here.
And your answer to that?
Well, but that's easy when you don't have ongoing issues. And in fact, when I came on the council 8 years ago now, there were some issues that I wasn't entirely enamored with, the operations of animal control for one. And I really didn't take a decision to go in and, throw a bomb in the midst. I went in instead with the attitude of, let's bend the curve, let's find the people that are good and work with them, let's make the ones that need improvement and make them better, and let's all move together in an idea of union, looking for long-term change.
Yeah. Well, so the question then, there's been a lot of 3-2 votes on major issues. Who's not following the voters, the citizens' requests?
Well, I feel like that we had 4 previous elections before this last one. And each time those candidates that were in favor of downtown redevelopment, kind of the path that we had been on fairly long term, won by fairly wide margins. And it was just in this last election with a 15% voter turnout that there seemed to be a change. And I understand that people were tired, and there have been some missteps. And if there were some things that I could do over, I would do them over. But I don't think one election does an utter turnaround in city policy justify.
Is he reading the citizens wrong?
Well, past councils, I guess the last 8 years, I think people in Amarillo felt like they were in good hands. They trusted their council and trusted what they were doing. And then you had the Wallace-Bajali, animal control, and all these issues coming up. People got more involved. They were more interested. And then they started asking questions. And then at that time, they wanted some new leadership down there, and that's why we ran.
Okay. Give us the short version, please, of how downtown redevelopment came about.
Well, this is, of course, 8 years. How short do you want, Karen?
It's a long time.
It's been a long time. Originally back about 8 years ago, there was a strategic action plan that was passed. And in fact, it went through countless meetings. We had countless focus groups about what people felt like they wanted. And they felt like they wanted economic development all over the city, and that's why the AEDC has been so popular for so long. But they felt like that they wanted more, and that's where the downtown idea came from. And ultimately out of that, the tiers was developed. And the different plans were put into place. We tried to recruit people to work at Downtown Amarillo, Inc. to carry the water on that, and ultimately got a developer in the form of Wallace-Bajali, and moved ahead in those projects with each subsequent election. Really what the core issue here is that property tax is very low in this city, almost the lowest in the state. The property tax rate does not even cover the cost of the police department here. So we live and die on sales tax revenue. So if you are going to be able to suppress property taxes and keep them as low as possible, you've got to develop your sales tax. And that means a bigger pie, and that means more economic activity, and that's what we were trying to do downtown.
What parts of that strategy raise red flags for you?
Well, I agree with the sales tax is our biggest revenue factor, and our sales tax has been growing. It just hasn't been growing downtown. If you look at Southwest Amarillo, it's on fire out there, and that's where the real dollars have been coming from. They've, the downtown redevelopment, I'm behind it. I think it needs to be more market-driven. When it was handled initially, and when when they vetted Wallace-Bajali, I thought there were some red flags there, and I personally wouldn't have hired them. I would have looked for somebody else. We've got our convention hotel coming, and the parking garage possibly coming, and the MPED's up for vote. You know, my concern is the use of hot tax. We've got a real good revenue stream in our hot tax, and that comes from the people on I-40 and I-27. And we're banking on that hot tax to continue to rise like it has been over the years. And I don't like the idea of banking on it going up and relying on it going up to be able to fund this project. You know, the payment's $2.7 million a year on the ballpark and the garage. That scares me a lot. And you know, you take the downtown hotel, I've heard it's going to throw off revenue 10 to 12 million. I don't know what it'll end up doing. Those are some figures I've heard, but they're exempt from hot tax. So they won't contribute to our hot tax fund at all. But the 10 to 12 million that they do put in their hotel down there will be people that were priorly staying out on I-40. So we're going to see a drop, I think, or it's going to flatten out real quick before it starts growing again. The last thing that concerns me is our two top hotel developers here. One of them left town and is building in California and in Laredo, and the other one's building in Dalhart now. They're a little fed up with their hot tax, and they don't have any say on how it's being spent.
Are the hoteliers you're speaking of ones that have built several new properties here in Amarillo?
Deepak Patel and Meena Patel.
Okay.
Meena's pretty well left altogether.
They added rooms to that picture too?
Yes.
Okay. So are his numbers right about the hot tax and relying on it too much?
Well, I think there's a disturbing pattern here altogether, because he mentioned Deepak Patel. I had a conversation with him one day. He told me he intended to add 600 new hotel rooms to this market in the next 3 years. And he said that indeed, if we went ahead with this Hilton flag hotel, that would probably impact his ability to be profitable. So what really is the issue here? I mean, we have a hotelier who wants to keep everything on I-40 so that he can continue to be very profitable and line his own pockets. I mean, having everything on I-40 and I-27 is very effective in that it helps chain hoteliers, it helps sign companies and the like, but at the same time, it doesn't do anything for our economically disadvantaged areas, and it doesn't do anything for a downtown area that's going upper Midwest Rust Belt.
We've already seen that Newcrest Image has broken ground or about to break ground, and they're going to be building or have started.
Right.
When we come to the MPEV, we were told we couldn't get a convention hotel without having the MPEV and the parking garage. Now they're building. Do we really need it?
Well, here's the thing. I heard a local business owner say, well, we see XL is putting a building up as well. We didn't need any of these things because, well, what we've done to these people is a big bait and switch. And it reflects very negatively on us as a city and as a city of character. Because we told these people we have a AAA bond rating, we've been very stable for very long, we've got these catalyst projects, we're going to do those, and then once they started and committed their funds, we said, oh, wait. And in fact, we heard it again just a few minutes ago. Mr. Burkett said that, well, we may be doing a parking garage. Look, we're contractually obligated to do a parking garage, and if indeed we don't do a parking garage, our own interim city attorney says we're in violation of our contract with the hotelier. What kind of a message is that to send to the people of Amarillo and people who potentially are going to be doing business in this city in the future?
Are you willing to break that contract?
No, not break the contract. We are under contract to provide 150 spaces to the new hotel, and we can sell some spaces to Potter County, and I wouldn't think about breaking that deal. I want to go back a little bit on that question, though. You know, the hoteliers up and down I-40, they're not lining their pockets. They may be lining their pockets, but they're doing it with their own hard-earned money. They're receiving no incentives, no abatements, nothing at all. And that's what they're upset about, is the downtown hotel receives so many abatements.
And the question on the property tax abatements, you know, is separate, but as far as hot tax goes, is that not paid by the people who stay there, not the hotels themselves?
That's true.
Okay.
Yes. And we're relying on that hot tax to go up. And it's scary. If it doesn't go up, we're in trouble.
The record on the hot tax has been that it's gone up for the last several years.
Yeah,
is that correct?
It's up several millions in the last 5 to 8 years.
So
yeah, that's correct.
Does that worry you that there's a bottom coming?
I think there's a flat coming, because you're going to have the biggest hotel in town not paying any hot tax, making no contributions to it.
Let's turn to the MPEV and the stadium question. Vince Nowak, one of the critics of the downtown plan, he's a Potter County resident. He has said at several meetings that his plan B is not to spend the money to do the ballpark. Is that your plan B, or should you be offering some alternatives?
I think if it doesn't pass in November, we'll come up with some alternatives, listen to the people and kind of get what they want and try to build something that'll bring families downtown.
Is that starting from square one?
Well, on that we can't agree. I mean, the way this whole downtown economic development process works is you've got to have a catalyst. We are supposed to build a parking garage as outlined in the contract. And it's not 150 spaces, and it's not 250 spaces. It's over 700 spaces. And we were counting on having a high traffic area there to help provide some nominal revenue so that we could finance the parking garage and finance whatever goes in across the street at the MPEV. The problem is none of these projects work without the other. You've got to have a large flow of people that is brought downtown by an MPEV, brought downtown by other retail, and then individuals out in the market can say, go to their banker and say, wow, I'd like to open a business downtown, and I think I can make it work. And the banker says, I believe it can work. And that's how economic success begets additional economic success. If you take one of the catalyst projects out of the process, it begins to become disjointed and unglued because you don't have the people coming down to pay for the parking garage that will spin off additional revenue for the MPEV. And so we've got to have something to replace whatever is there. It's got to be highly effective.
You know, the studies clearly show if you do any kind of homework, catalyst projects really don't work. You've got to start on a smaller scale and build from that, like on Polk Street and things like that. If you do your research, it's not the cure-all, and I think that's been the misleading thing. We build a convention hotel and this parking garage and this ballpark, suddenly downtown is just going to flourish. There's going to be all kinds of businesses come down there, and I don't want people to be disappointed in that. You're asking, and Mark Nair had a good point. He says, we're going to ask the public to pay more to do the exact same thing. They're going to now have to park a block away in a parking garage, pay $12, walk through a hotel to go to the Performing Arts Center. He says he thinks it's going to hurt the attendance at the Performing Arts Center, and I tend to agree to it. The other thing, I'm concerned about us taking money away we continually take money away from the Civic Center Fund, and that thing needs to be having money thrown at it, not taken away from it.
Was the idea to do the Civic Center in the second phase once people started to see some energy downtown?
It was. The public has really stated that they feel like they'd like a new Coliseum, and I hear that a lot. I think what we tried to do when we decided on the Catalyst project that we decided on is we wanted the people to have enough confidence that they thought we could go ahead. I mean, if you look around this country and you look at downtowns or you look at areas around campuses like Texas Tech, like Fort Worth, like Tulsa, all of them began with a Catalyst project. All of them showed that the city was going to be committed to their downtown, and that's what provided the kind of confidence that people could come down there and begin to invest their private dollars. So to say that Catalyst projects don't work, that's just not my read of the tea leaves at all.
Do you think that the Civic Center should have been the first focus?
Yes, I think that's what the majority of the people want, and that's where you're going to have you're building a nice convention hotel. You need a place to have nice, large conventions, and that is our Civic Center. We're not going to walk people across the street and have it on a baseball park, on a baseball diamond.
You've questioned, to focus again on the garage, you've questioned the need for retail space in the parking garage. Are we contractually obligated to do that?
And there's different interpretations. I don't know the answer to that for sure. You know, I had a problem all along with the government being in the retail commercial space. I don't like it, and I made that clear in the beginning. And then they put so many restrictions on the retail space. You talk to all the people that came to look at the bid, there were so many restrictions put on it that they all left. You know, you can't put certain kinds of people in there. You have to put just these kind of retailers or a restaurant, and it has to be this or that, to where we didn't get any interest.
Retail, is it a must?
Well, I think it's part of the contract. And I think we've had 3 legal opinions that say it's part of the contract. In fact, you know, Mr. Burkett wanted to go outside and get a 3rd opinion, and he got that opinion, and they agreed that we were obligated to do the retail shell. Now, we're not obligated to finish out. And admittedly, what happened, this was going to be something that Wallace Bajali was going to be responsible for before they cratered in Joplin, Missouri. And so the local government corporation took that on, and we're trying to make the best we can out of it. The local government corporation has done a good job of protecting the city in the event that one of our developing partners, one of our hotel partners, one of our engineering partners goes under. We picked up the contracts and we moved right along, as long as you have members on the LGC who are still interested in doing the work.
Are you committed to any piece of this downtown project? I mean, is the hotel safe, or are you trying to look at?
Well, the hotel's moving forward, and I wish them the best of luck. I think hopefully it'll help bring us conventions. Initially, that was the whole thing. From our CBC, they said we need a convention hotel, we're missing conventions. So we're going to give them that hotel, and then we'll just have to watch the numbers on the conventions and see if that was indeed the factor.
How important is it to you to decide whether the garage or the ballpark and MPEV go forward?
Well, I want to do what the people want as far as the MPEV. I've said that before. I don't know that the ballpark, there's a lot of uncertainty on it. We don't know where a lot of these projected revenues that are going to pay for it are just nothing but projections. We're not sure if we can get a team to even lease it from us. There's just a lot of unknowns that scare me as far as that goes.
How confident are you that this is the right plan?
Well, without electioneering, which of course Mr. Burkett and I cannot do, I feel confident based on, I'm an obstetrician gynecologist, and when I have a patient with a heart problem, I get an expert, one that I trust, such as the one that did strategic action plan back 8 years ago. And if they tell me that this is something that will work, that will be a catalyst project and be effective, I believe them. I don't get a recommendation from my cardiologist and then say, oh no, I'm going to ignore that, I'm going to do something else. And so I hire consultants and I believe what they tell me, and they had no incentive to dump a ballpark in our lap if they did not think that would be an effective plan. And I think a lot of communities have proven that it is.
We did a baseball study back in 2010, and the whole study was about AA, AAA teams, and they were doing comparisons to that. We don't have a AA or AAA team. We have an independent league team, and it's a totally different animal. It's different. Even single A ball, which we can't get due to geographical. They're on the East Coast, West Coast, so they wouldn't put a single A team here. But even the single A team that went in, what's the city they went in? You guys are Fort. Anyway, Fort Wayne, yeah, and they've had some success with it. But the Padres put in $7 million of the cost to build the stadium. They're sending the players there. They're paying the salaries, and that's working. But when you have an independent team and you're hanging your hat on that, it gets scary for me as an individual. I just don't want this to come back on the taxpayers in the end. It scares me.
We're short on time now, so we'll have short answers here, but
sure.
Can this council compromise in the future?
Yes, I think so.
And how do you accomplish that if you seem so at odds now?
Well, it seems like so far it's been, I'm willing to compromise if you agree with me. That's the feeling we're getting from across the table. As long as you agree with what we're saying, we can compromise. We're going to have to get to a point where we're looking out for the best of the city, and that's what I'm looking forward to doing.
Is that
well, yeah, I don't think there's any question that any of the city council members I've ever worked for are looking out for the best for the city. I'm glad to hear Mr. Burkett say that he is in favor of the hotel, but if we don't honor our contract on the garage, I think we've got troubles here to come. I think we can find places where we can agree. I think if you respect the minority and you don't, give them the back of your hand on every vote, I think there's plenty of places we can work together as long as we're looking out for what's best for the people of this city.
I've got a short question for you. This is a non-binding election. State law requires it to be that. If the vote does not go the way that you either one would like, are you committed to carrying through the wishes that were explained in voting?
Well, if it doesn't pass, like we said earlier, we'll come up with a plan B. If it does pass, I think we'd go to the drawing board and see what we can do with it and see what interest we get, and we'd kind of build on it from there, see what actual costs are.
But you're committed to trying to carry through with a ballpark if that's what the voters want?
Well, some type of ballpark.
Okay.
I don't know if it would be the one we see in the rendering. I don't know without knowing what kind of tenant we would have or anything else. It's hard to, I'm not going to sit here and speculate.
For you, if it goes against, are you committed to following through on the vote?
Well, I am. There are many times in which you have to take something to the voters and the people and give them a couple of bites at the apple. I don't know that we won't have in the next election cycle a group of people who feel like they want a new and improved and a different perspective. So sure, I think I'm going to always respect what the people say in a circumstance like that.
Okay. I appreciate your time. Councilman Eades, Councilman Burkett, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
It's a pleasure.